Welcome to the new quantum era. A new era of consciousness is here. Hi, my name is Patricia. This channel exists because I survived things that could have ended me, and instead they shaped me. And I'm here sharing my story not for sympathy, but for truth. And if you have ever felt that life started against you, this is for you. I was born in a little town in São Paulo state in Brazil, and I come from a family very simple, very humble, and my mother passed away when I was 1 year old, giving birth to my sister. And since then, my father became alcoholic, and I was raised by my grandmother, my dad's mom. And my sister was raised by my other grandmother, my mom's side, and my grandpa. And then we were raised separately since my mom passed. My dad became alcoholic. His dad was already alcoholic, and he had gone through a lot of things already by the time my mom passed. So for him it was easy to just fall into the trap of being alcoholic too, and numbing his pain through alcohol. And since my mom passed, I lost my dad too, because he just couldn't handle having two babies and losing the love of his life. And I lived in that environment, very chaotic and very, very difficult to live, because I had my grandpa that was alcoholic, and my grandmother had already 12 kids. So when I was baby, she still had 3 teenagers in the house, plus my dad going through his own thing. And it was a very difficult childhood. When I was 3 years old, my dad was starting a barbecue outside of the house. And I put my head outside of the door to see what he was doing. And at the same time, he was putting more alcohol in the barbecue, and the bottle exploded and all the fire came towards me. And then I got burned in my whole body, my hair, my face. And it was a pretty difficult moment again for my dad. I almost died. I spent 14 days in the hospital, and it was very difficult. And then I grew up with my body full of scars, and I lived in a small town. Everybody would be asking what happened to her. So my whole childhood, I just was listening to that story, and I kind of created a personality like I'm a victim of life. Sometimes I would hear my grandma speaking about my mom, and I didn't understand, because I thought my mom is my grandma, because I would call my grandma mom because I thought she was my mom. And sometimes I would hear stories about my mom being dead and passing away when I was baby. So I feel like because the stories and adults at that time didn't have the awareness that kids could not hear some kind of stories or conversations. So I feel like I grew up like having this victim mentality and feelings inside of me. And moving forward, my dad, when I was 8 years old, he met a woman, and I was pretty happy with that, because he was very happy with her, and she would treat me very good, and I was very excited about having her in my life. And I was very needy, because my grandma would work all day long. For 7 years I stayed in the house with her, didn't go to school, because in Brazil you don't need to go to school. At that time, 40 years ago, you didn't need to go to school to go to preschool. And then I would stay in the house with her, so just by myself, playing by myself all day long. And when I met my stepmother, she had a son that was 2 years older than me, and I got excited to have a family. My dad moved in with her. We moved all together, and as soon as I moved to her house, the abuse started. She would abuse me when my dad would not be around, her son too. My dad started to become very aggressive towards her because she had a kind of a temper, and he would drink and would be very, very stressful environment and chaotic again. And she would hit me when my dad was not around, and was very painful. But on the same time, I met Buddhism, Nichiren Buddhism, while I was living with her, because she was Buddhist for a while, and I started chanting. I think it was like almost 9 years old. I asked her to chant with her, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So, and then I learned through listening to what Buddhism would teach in the meetings, I learned that we should pray for people's happiness. So I would pray for all of them, all their happiness. And my happiness, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, let me pray, because it's really painful to observe and observe their dynamic. And my dad, very aggressive, hit her many times, and she was there, still like going back with him. We would move. My grandma lived in a different city than my stepmother, and then we would move around all the time that they would fight. I would change schools, and I would change schools at least two times per year, three times per year, and it was very, very difficult. And my family didn't want to deal with me anymore, because once my dad decided to take me away from my grandma, she said, okay, you take care of her. She's your responsibility now. You're not going to come back. And you need to get your life together, put your life together. But my dad never did. He just like, sometimes he would stay 2 months without drinking, because my stepmother would ask him to stop drinking, with the condition, like, I stay with you, but if you stop drinking. And then he would stop for a couple months, and then would go back, and was always that cycle of stopping and going back. A lot of aggression, and I couldn't understand why I was going through all of that. I just would pray and pray. So for the 6 years that I lived with my mother-in-law, my stepmother, she just like was very mean to me. But on the same time, she taught me a lot of things, about life, how to be a good person. She was very correct, and I learned Buddhism with her, so I would go to the meetings and I would enjoy a lot. So my connection with my mentor, Daisaku Ikeda, was built in that 6 years. I just felt this connection very strong. And then when I was 13 years old, they separated, and then we went to live with my uncle, that was my dad's brother, my favorite uncle. He was very special to me, always would give me a lot of love and attention. And then when we went to live with him, my dad decided to go back to my stepmother months later and didn't say anything, just left me there with my uncle. And he abused me. One night he came home drunk, and he tried to abuse me sexually, and was very painful for me because I had him close to my heart, and that was a very difficult experience for me. I went to talk with my grandpa that had my sister and my grandmom, and I asked them, please save me. I can't go back there. I can't be with him. I'm afraid of what he can do. This time didn't happen anything, but can happen anytime. And then my grandpa helped me, let me stay with them until I would find a job and put myself together. But at that point, I was 14 years old, very young still, and I was happy that I was living with my sister. Finally, we had an opportunity to be together for a year. So, and then when I was 15 years old, I just stopped going to high school because I was working. I found a job as a dentist assistant, and I was super tired. I couldn't have strength to go to, energy to go to school at night. And then I dropped high school, and I would suffer bullying all the time at school. So school for me was a very painful experience, even though I loved to learn, but I always suffered a lot of bullying because my scar. And then when I grew up, when I was a teenager, because my family's history, like not having my dad, not having a mom, not having a family, structured family. In a small city, people would make fun of me or would not respect me. And that was very painful. So, and then I dropped high school when I was 15 years old to work, and then I focused on working to pay bills and to rent a room in another place. So I left my grandparents' house to live in this place where was like a restaurant in front, and on the back the owner would rent rooms. And in that place I met a lady that was pretty magical. I can close my eyes and remember her perfectly until this day. She was so calm, so serene, so peaceful, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be like that. She was an angel, and definitely I felt she was an angel. At that time, I already was having a lot of spiritual experiences. I saw my mom one time behind the door telling me that the suffering was going to stop once when my dad hit me, and I was crying in the bedroom, and my mom appeared. I was suffering so much, and then I asked her to not come back. I was afraid, and after that I feel like I shut off a little bit my abilities of seeing her. But when I was a teenager, I would receive visions, a lot of visions, and I could sense people's energy. And this lady that I met at this place where I lived, she definitely turned that ability on. I could sense that she was an angel. And it's funny because I never seen her again after I moved from that place. And she gave me a book, like a very thick book, Napoleon Hill's book, called The 12 Laws of Success. And I remember I told her, I can't read this book. Only by looking at this book, I feel tired already. It's 700 pages. I can't do this. I need to work. I can't concentrate myself just to read all this book. And she said, don't worry, read whatever you can. Whatever you can, it's going to help you in your journey. I said, okay. And I trusted her because she was pretty wise. She always would say wise things. And she was like 37 years old and I was 15. So I really looked up to her. And I remember reading this book. I said, okay. She said that I can read only what I can. So I'm going to read the first lesson. I started reading. Let's start it at least. Let's see what this is about. And then the first lesson was the power of the mastermind. So together with that lesson and all the things that I learned in Buddhism with my mentor, I feel like really helped me, that knowledge helped me to get strong that next 4 years that I went through a lot, not having place to stay, losing job, being in one house here, another house there, living people's house like just as a favor, helping them with the house or helping them with whatever I could to be able to have where to live and not be in the street or on anything like that. So it was a very difficult next 4 years. When I was about 17 years old, I lost a job, and then I said I need to go find my dad, and he was back to my stepmother's house, and I said I need your help, I don't have where to live, and I went back to live with them. I found a job, and my dad was still the same, and the alcohol had really took over his life. He was not working so much anymore, he didn't have energy, he just would drink every day. And I remember I decided to not need to live with alcoholic father anymore in my life. So I said, I want to cut this karma from my life because it's too painful to watch him just, giving up of his life and not giving me what I need, the support that I need. So, and then I started chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. So I had this job that I need to be at my job at 8 a.m. And I would get up 6 a.m. and I would chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo for 30 minutes every day. I wrote down my goal that was to never need to live with an alcoholic father anymore. And I was praying for his completely happiness. And the 30th day, my dad decided to leave the house from nowhere. He just decided to leave the house and rent a house the next block. They got separate for the last time. They never went back together. And that relationship was 13 years of my stepmother going through all that she did and finally getting a point that she was over with my dad. And I stayed living with her, and as soon as something happened with my job, I lost my job because the secretary that worked there for 10 years wants to come back. So, and then actually she just won a break for 6 months, and then I lost my job again. And my stepmother said, you cannot stay here anymore. I'm sorry, you can't pay, help me with the rent and the things. I can't have you here. So that was pretty painful because again, life was like I was seeing that people would help me just with the condition of having money back. They would not do for no reason. And actually sometimes the strangers would do to help me, but my family or people close to me would not help without a condition. So I learned a lot of painful lessons, and I left her house. My friend helped me. I went to live with her aunt, and I got a job, and then the next 2 years was very difficult here and there, living here and there, and meeting some roommates. And then I went to live with this girl that was a very smart girl. She started teaching me English. She was a English teacher. So at that time was when I loved, I always loved English since high school. In Brazil, we learn English in high school. And I started studying English with her. She started to teach me tarot, and my abilities started to come up again, of being very in tune with my intuition and receiving visions. And I always, since I was in my teenagers, I would see these visions and I would tell people, oh, no, there is something more for me. I know, I feel it. And I decided to believe that there was something more, that I wasn't going through all of that just for no reason. So that was a big starting point for me, because from nowhere, like a friend of mine that I practice Buddhism with, she was living in a bigger city, and she said, I know that you are struggling, come here, come live with me, we chant together and you're going to find a job. There are a lot of colleges here, you can put your life together, I can help you. So that was a big thing for me. So I went, and the next day I went to bring my resume. I had a training for bingo, and I went to the bingos and I left my resume. As I got a job, I started my life. I emancipate myself, rent an apartment for me. I stayed 3 years in this bingo until bingo closed in Brazil, because was not by law, they couldn't have bingos anymore, so they closed all the bingos in Brazil. And then I went to work in the mall, selling women's clothes, and then I met a girl, Ligia, a dear friend. She started saying, you need to become flight attendant, you need to become flight attendant. And I was like, no, I think I would do business. I would go to college to do business. And she said, no, I got my license. I never got to get in an airline company, but I feel like you do it. I said, oh my gosh. And I started praying for and to know more about it. And Ligia was pretty intense about telling me to be a flight attendant, and I just trust that she was someone bringing me a message that I'm supposed to pay attention. So, and then I chanted about it, everything I would chant about it. At that time, I was already very focusing my energy towards my practice, and being very strong with my practice with Buddhism. And I decided to go to São Paulo and try. I was super afraid, because São Paulo is a big city, and I was afraid of not surviving to São Paulo. But I went anyway, and I overcame my fears, and I went to São Paulo. So yeah, and then I became flight attendant, and this will be the story for the next video, because I don't want to get too long here. And then yes, I'm going to share more story about me being flight attendant and how was my evolution in that moment of my life, because it was 8 years of a lot of learning experiences, and we'll be starting for the next video. Thank you for watching. I love you. And if you didn't hit the button, subscribe, please. Send this video for whoever you think will make them happy and help them. Yeah, and thank you for being here. Welcome to the new quantum era.